PR Connections Radio presents.
Welcome to Vegas Hockey Hub here on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Kelly. And on this episode of Vegas Hockey Hub, we'll be doing another edition of Player Profiles, as we're going to be breaking down the goalie prospect and the young goalie who has now made his debut, and a guy who has now been a member of the Vegas Golden Knights for a while. We're talking about goaltender Jiri Patera. And there's definitely going to be some good stuff we're going to be talking about here on the show. And we're going to go through his career from where he started at the beginning, for what he did in Czech Republic, what he did in the WHL, AHL, now the NHL. So this is going to kind of be our player profile, breaking down his career in the NHL as a member of your Vegas Golden Knights. So this is really going to be what we're going to be talking about, breaking down what he is doing. Now, before we get into that, we have to advertise very quickly PRConnectionsRadio.com. We have about a dozen shows on the network, including Vegas Hockey Hub. So if you want to go to PR Connections Radio, check out all the amazing content on there. We have shows like, for example, Cozy Stone, where she interviews parents, and she likes to really do stuff like that. You have Crypto and Cash on Mondays. So if you really want to educate yourself on the crypto world, you have Crypto and Cash. Love of Business, where they interview business owners, on Tuesdays. Then you also have We Have the Power, which is by Brian Gardner, on Thursdays. A lot of fantastic content. But if you want to watch all of that, go to PRConnectionsRadio.com and go to our YouTube channel, PR Connections Radio. We upload every show onto the network. We are live every single day. And definitely check out the YouTube channel, subscribe to it. And if you can, like and share with all of your friends all around the world. As once again, with our YouTube channel, we are uploading content every single day to PR Connections Radio. So I highly recommend and I advise everyone to go to our YouTube channel, PR Connections Radio, and subscribe so you not miss any episode of Vegas Hockey Hub and all of the amazing content we have on our network. So getting into the person that we're talking about right here, right now on this show. And, when it comes to Jiri, he is someone that has a really interesting journey into the NHL. I mean, this is a guy who, when you really stop and analyze it, he has had a long road to get into the NHL. But he has done a really good job once he has gotten to the NHL. He has done a fantastic job as a member of your Vegas Golden Knights. But let's just break this down real quick. Let's talk about Jiri on this show as we're doing the player profile on him. So we're going to start at the very beginning. So he plays in the Czech Republic. Now, for anybody who does not know about Jiri, let me give you a little bit of a backstory on who he is. So, for the 24-year-old goaltender, he started out there in Prague, out there in the Czech Republic. That is where he was born. And he played in the youth system. He had some good youth teams that he played in the Czech Republic. That's how he really kind of got his start throughout his whole career. He also played for the Czech Republic team in World Juniors, for the under-18 team in 2017, the under-20 team in 2019. I mean, he was on the World Junior Championship. He also was part of the Gretzky Cup in 2016. There's a lot of good that he did in the Czech Republic and also internationally. And I do have to mention, when it comes to Jiri, that this is a guy. When it comes to Jiri, this is someone who a lot of people focus on what he did once he came to America. Like, there's a lot of people who really break that down. But what some people don't analyze enough is that when he got drafted, and we'll talk about it later on, when he got drafted, he hadn't even made the jump yet to North America. So his experience and his player profile that he did in the Czech Republic that earned him a spot in the NHL. And, like I said, so from 2012 to almost 2018, that is how long Jiri was playing in the Czech Republic. He played for the under 16 team, under 18 team. I mean, he was playing for a bunch of series at the time. And even playing for all of these series, you could tell that he had some talent. There was a 2015 season. While playing for the under 16 team, he had 29 games played and a goals against average under 1.8 and a save percentage of 95, which is just incredible for a young goalie like Jiri to really take off and in one of his younger years to play 29 games and have a goals against average under 2. That is very impressive. And even getting into the World Juniors and everything that happened there, I just have to mention this as well. He played for the under 17 team in 2016, played 6 games for them that year. And then in 2017 for the under 18 squad, he played in 3 games that year. And, unfortunately, he went 5-8 in the 14 games that he would play throughout the entire 2017 season while playing for the Czech Republic under 18 team. And then for the under 20 team, he was in 5 games that year and had a record of 2-3. Now, I do want to mention with Jiri that roster that he played alongside had some good talent on it. The Czech Republic under 18 and under 20 team, they had guys like Lukas Dostal, they had Martin Necas, and Filip Zadina that played in the Czech Republic alongside Jiri and did a really solid job. After all, Zadina was a first-round pick. Dostal has now become a NHL solid goalie in Anaheim. And Necas, he has become a mainstay, a top 6 forward, a 70-point guy in Carolina. So, when you really break all this down, this is what happened with Jiri. Jiri is a guy who really learned while being in the Czech Republic, kind of owned his skills a little bit, and eventually earned a spot in the 2017 NHL entry draft. So, for him, he would get drafted in the 6th round, 161 overall, by your Vegas Golden Knights. Here's a fun fact about that pick. The pick that Jiri was taken by was originally owned by Buffalo. The Vegas Golden Knights acquired this pick by selecting William Carrier in the 2017 NHL expansion draft. When the Buffalo Sabres gave up William Carrier, they also gave up in the deal a 6th round pick in 2017. So when you really stop and analyze it and really break it down, if William Carrier isn't selected by Buffalo, then Jiri would not be a Vegas Golden Knight. Instead, he would either be a Buffalo Sabre taken at that exact position, or he would be on another team just being selected in the 6th round. But it's really fascinating how, he was taken with a pick that Vegas got from selecting William Carrier. That's just kind of a fun fact there. So as we're talking about him and doing a player profile here on the show, I'm your host, Ian Rickelli. This is Vegas Hockey Hub. And he would then make the jump to North America. So after being selected from being from the Czech Republic, he would get his first taste of playing in North America. So for Jiri, he would join the Cedar Rapids Rough Riders in 2017-2018. And what I find incredible about him and what is fascinating to me is that in the United States Hockey League, he would actually do, not great, but he wouldn't do bad either. As in 34 games that season, he would have 13 wins, 13 losses, and would have a goals against average over 3. But you know what? That is his first season coming over to North America. There is a learning curve when you come over to the States. So for a guy who's very young at this point, someone who, like I said, is 24 now, So if you can imagine back in 2017, this is a guy who's barely 18 years old, and he is playing junior hockey, playing in the United States for the first time ever. Well, after that experience playing for the Cedar Rapids in the United States Hockey League, he would then make the jump to the Western Hockey League. But not only would he go to the Western Hockey League, Jiri would actually play for the Brandon Wheat Kings. We have made a video in the past on this channel on the connection between Brandon and the Vegas Golden Knights. And the reason why we've made that video is because some people don't know that the Brandon Wheat Kings used to be a team owned and coached and managed by the current general manager of your Vegas Golden Knights, Kelly McCrimmon. And at that point, Kelly McCrimmon still had ties to the Brandon Wheat Kings. So Jiri in 2018, 2019, 2019, 2020, he would be then transferred over to the Western Hockey League, and still at a young age, he would play in the Western Hockey League for Brandon, and he actually did a really good job in this situation. Not only would Jiri be named the Eastern Conference Goaltender of the Year in the Western Hockey League in 2020, but he also would be named to the first All-Star team that year, being on the same team as Dylan Cousins out there in Buffalo, Braden Schneider, who's now playing for the New York Rangers. This was a really good team. And by the way, if anybody wants to look it up, it's actually fascinating to look at. That first team, the All-Star team in the Western Hockey League. So the Eastern Conference was Kalen Addison, Braden Schneider, Jiri, and then you had on the Western Conference, Dustin Wolf was the goaltender, who is now playing for the Calgary Flames. You had Ty Smith as a defenseman, who currently is playing for the Pittsburgh Penguins. You also had Seth Jarvis, who's playing in Carolina, and Connor Zary, who's currently playing right now in Calgary. So it's really interesting looking back a couple of years from now, seeing how that first All-Star team and the first team in the Western Hockey League, how so much of that talent has now transferred over into the NHL. They're getting playing time. They're playing in the National Hockey League. But like I said, 4 years ago, he was named as the goaltender on the All-Star first team in the Western Hockey League. Now, what was his stats while playing in the Western Hockey League? How did he perform for Brandon those 2 years? Well, in 2018-2019, the Brandon Wheat Kings, they would be out of the playoffs that year as they would only get 70 points on the year. So the Brandon Wheat Kings would miss the Western Hockey League playoffs. And then 2019-2020, they actually did better that year, but unfortunately COVID hit, so they weren't able to actually have a playoff in the Western Hockey League despite having a good season. And how did Jiri play in his 2 seasons for the Brandon Wheat Kings? Well, in 2018-2019, he would play in 48 games in net, and he would have 22 wins, 20 losses, and 2 ties, where you would also have a goals against average around 90% and a save percentage at 90% and a goals against average over 3. So, you know what? Still for a young guy, he's still learning. He's trying to, become a much better goaltender. He's trying to learn some stuff, trying to really become a really solid goaltender in the Western Hockey League. But the second year he was in Brandon is when he really took a step up with Jiri. As in 2019-2020, he would play in 41 games in net. He would have 24 wins, 12 losses, and 4 ties, and they would have a save percentage of 92% and a goals against average of 2.5. So this is really when Jiri displayed that he could be a really good goalie at the next level. He was really showing the progress and taking the next step into being a solid goalie. Kelly McCrimmon, George McPhee, Bill Foley, the people who are in management and people who are looking over the Vegas Golden Knights, they took notice of what Jiri was doing in the Western Hockey League as he would make his minor league debut in 2020 for the Henderson Silver Knights. So in 2020, 2021, he would play in 7 regular season games for Henderson. Now, this is, like I said, a small sample size. He went 2-4 in Henderson that year. But what you really have to point out is that, once again, due to COVID, there was a lot of changes in minor league hockey. There was differences in junior hockey. I mean, pretty much everything was tossed around in the 2020-2021 season. So I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm not going to bash him for him playing only 7 games in 2020 and the fact that he went 2-4. This is definitely something that happened around COVID. That's fine. We'll shrug it off. How did he do in 2021, 2022 for your Vegas Golden Knights organization? Well, the Vegas Golden Knights, realizing that he can't go back to the Western Hockey League, he's going to have to be in minor league hockey. He's going to have to really develop in the Silver Knights system. They did something smart, something that's happened to a lot of goalies in the past, happened to Braden Holtby. It's happened to plenty of goalies in the past. He would split a season between the AHL, which is AAA hockey, and ECHL, which is AA hockey, as he would make starts for not just Henderson, but Fort Wayne as well. Now, the Fort Wayne Comets, they were at the time AA affiliate of Vegas. This is before they went to Savannah, which is what they are now. The Fort Wayne Comets, who are currently the affiliate, they're currently an affiliate right now of the Edmonton Oilers. Well, at one point, they were affiliate of Vegas. And during this time period, Jiri would make starts for Henderson and for Fort Wayne. So when you really stop and analyze it, and by the way, I just want to show these photos real quick. So Jiri, that's him playing for the Western Hockey League, playing for the Brandon Wheat Kings, one of the nicest jerseys in the Western Hockey League, by the way. And then you see him once again doing all that stuff in the Western Hockey League. Of course, him getting drafted by your Vegas Golden Knights and signing an entry-level contract. Now, this is what I'm talking about right here, as he would split the season between the AHL and the ECHL. And this season in 2021, 2022, this is when Jiri, kind of showed that he can kind of hold his own a little bit. So in 15 games playing for Fort Wayne, he would have a 7 wins, 5 losses, and 3 ties. He would have a 90.6 save percentage and a goals against average of 2.7. So he went down from the year before where he had 3.5 to about 2.7. He would also be called up to the AHL around that time as well, play for the Henderson Silver Knights, and he would play in 22 games, have 10 wins, 11 losses, and 1 overtime loss, and then a save percentage of 91%, but a goals against average of 2.7. So you can see with Jiri that he is really developing and kind of becoming a steady goalie in the AHL, in the ECHL. Now, I do want to mention that after 2021, 2022, he would never go back to the ECHL, as he would become a mainstay in the AHL for Henderson. So in 2022, he would actually start for your Silver Knights in the Calder Cup playoffs. He would actually play in 2 games for Henderson in 2022, as the Henderson Silver Knights would take on in the first round. They would actually play the Colorado Eagles, who are the affiliate of the Colorado Avalanche. He would play in both games for Henderson, but unfortunately, Colorado would move on to the next round. And Jiri's stats in the playoffs that year, it is first ever experience playing in the Calder Cup playoffs. 0 for 2, a save percentage of 90%, and a goals against average over 3. Now for Jiri, he would start his 3rd season in the AHL in 2022-2023, but he would show his longevity. As in 2022, 2023, he became the main starter for Henderson. He had played in over 30 games for Henderson that year, and his stats are actually interesting to look at when you actually study it. Because for a Henderson Silver Knights team that was kind of around average all year, he would actually have 14 wins, 15 losses, and 1 overtime loss, a save percentage of 91%, but a goals against average of 2.8. So at this point in time for Jiri, he would be consistent. He is someone that would be a save percentage of 2.7 or 2.8 in the AHL playing for Henderson. So for someone like Jiri, he was showing the consistency that Vegas would need at the NHL level. And after spending 3 years playing in the AHL for Henderson, and after having a little bit of time playing in the AHL, he would get called up to your Vegas Golden Knights, as Logan Thompson and Laurent Brisebois would both be hurt. And since Jonathan Quick hadn't been traded for yet, and there was a kind of a gap at goalie, Jiri would then be recalled up to Vegas, and he would actually be called up and sent down not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 separate times in the 2022-2023 season. And this was Jiri's chance in the NHL. And something I found interesting about Jiri is, everyone always wants to talk about who was your first opponent, who was the first game that you would play against, but more importantly, would you pick up the win on your NHL debut? Would you end up picking up the win? Well, for Jiri, he would pick up his first ever start against the St. Louis Blues on March 12th of 2023. And not only would he pick up the win against the St. Louis Blues, but this is also the same Jiri that ended up the next game against Columbus picking up the win for Vegas. So those 2 wins in the 2022-2023 season was very valuable for Vegas. And in that season, like I said, 2-0 in both starts. But he would have a save percentage of 92%, a goals against average of 2.5. And he was really showing that he could have a bright future in Vegas. That because Laurent Brisebois, because Logan Thompson kept on getting hurt, now regardless of what would happen at the trade deadline, and regardless of what would happen in those situations, when it comes to Jiri, he was showing to your Vegas Golden Knights that if you need a young goalie, if you need a 24-year-old that can come in and play a couple of games and be kind of an emergency goalie type of situation, you need a young guy, he would be your guy. And I will say for Jiri, this is something that I do want to mention. For the 2022-2023 season, everyone talks about Brisebois, Hill, Thompson. Everyone loves to talk about those goalies, but a lot of people forget that Jonathan Quick, he played a few games, and they were crucial games late in the year. Well, Jiri played in 2 valuable games late in the stretch. And you never know. You never know how valuable those 2 games would have been to not just the momentum, but more importantly, the seeding of the playoffs. I mean, that's 4 points that they could have potentially lost if Jiri hadn't been in net and won against St. Louis and against Columbus. Now, I will say, since you see right there, that was the first game you saw him go up against St. Louis. And this was something that a lot of people paid attention to. Now, the Henderson Silver Knights did not make the playoffs in 2022-2023. So for a guy like Jiri, it's really interesting to see, how he does moving forward. But some good news for him is that he would receive an extension by your Vegas Golden Knights. As in 2020, as he would sign a 1-year contract and would get a 1-year extension that would keep him until 2024. So for someone like Jiri, he showed that he could be a constant, that he is someone that regardless of what happens this year, next year, if they do bring him back afterwards, regardless of what happens next, Aiden Hill's the starting goalie. We know that. Logan Thompson is the backup, the all-star backup. We get that. But based off the last couple of years, we have seen how vital a backup goalie can be when one of your guys gets hurt. Let's just say, for sake of the argument, Aiden Hill and Logan Thompson both go down. Well, then you have a young 24-year-old in Jiri that can come in and start some games for Vegas. Let's just say that the Vegas Golden Knights have such an issue with injuries that you have two of your guys from Henderson playing for Vegas. Well, that'd be very valuable if you have a 24-year-old who has experience in the NHL and someone who's been biding his time and trying to earn a spot in Vegas. But I want to know from everyone watching right here, right now, how do you feel about Jiri? What did you see in his limited playing time for Vegas? I mean, what did you see for him as a member of your Vegas Golden Knights? Because like I mentioned before, if you don't have Jiri, if you do not have a young goalie that can come in and help out when someone gets hurt, the Vegas Golden Knights could easily lose a few games and lose some seeding when it mattered the most. But because of Jiri beating Columbus and St. Louis in 2022, 2023, those are some valuable games that Vegas definitely need to have. What do you see moving forward for Jiri? Because there's a lot of ideas about him once again playing in Henderson, him playing maybe some split series, kind of going back and forth between Vegas and Henderson. Now with him having that extension by Vegas, it's going to be interesting to see how he does moving forward. Because, 1 year left on your deal, 24 years old at goalie, and someone who, like I mentioned, is a backup goalie in the AHL / starting goalie in the AHL. So for someone like Jiri, who has 1 year left on his deal, he has signed a 1 year, $775,000. That's his cap hit right now. What is the expectations for Jiri? And as someone who's a hockey fan, I really want to see what he does this upcoming year, because you could really tell that if you give him some more starts this year, regardless if it's in the AHL or if in the NHL, but if you give him more starts and he becomes that full-time goalie, we'll be able to see if he can keep up the momentum that he had last year. Because this past year, like I said, he had the 2.5 goals against average in the NHL and a 2.8 in the AHL. And, even in ECHL, he had a 2.7. So far in the AHL, he's had a goals against average of around 2.7. So for Jiri, he has done a good job so far in his career. The main question is going to be, how is he going to perform with 1 year left on his deal? How is he going to do for your Vegas Golden Knights as he is, 1 year left, 24 years old, and somebody who's going to try to get another extension or try to stay and get a longer deal with your Vegas Golden Knights? It's all up to what happens at the end of the 2023-2024 season. But what I can tell you and what I do know is that when it comes to Jiri, he is someone who has shown that patience is a virtue. He has shown that if you're patient at developing a goalie, because remember, he had to start in the United States Hockey League, and then he had to play a couple of years in the Western Hockey League before even jumping over to the AHL and ECHL before finally getting a shot in the NHL. So this is our player profile on Jiri, Patera. And I will say to everyone watching all around the world, this is Vegas Hockey Hub. I'm your host, Ian Rakelli. And until next time, continue watching hockey. Go support junior hockey. And go, Knights, go.
PR Connections Radio thanks you for watching this podcast. Check out more episodes of this show and our others at prconnectionsradio.com.